Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Rugby World Cup Weekly, our flagship weekly review show. It's not been a great weekend for the vast majority of our listeners, if they're there at all. Ireland's quarter-final woes continued as we bid merci and au revoir Johnny Sexton and Keith Earls in a cruel end to their respective eras. A battling Wales came undone in Marseille to Michael Cheika's Argentina. England pipped Fiji in the same venue before South African masterclass saw them eliminate the host France in a game for the ages. Joining me tonight are two heartbroken, dispirited, but resilient Irishmen, considering they're on here. Even if we all enjoyed the weekend's action, should be said. So welcome back on to ball handling hooker and to Jack Fogarty. Welcome on, lads.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, lad.
It's always good to have you. Listen, we're gonna be honest here. We're gonna leave Ireland to the end. So if anyone wants to listen to conversations about South Africa, France, and all that, and avoid the Ireland chat, which plenty will, that's fair enough. We're gonna account for that. So we're gonna start with last night's thriller. South Africa 29-28 victors. As I said, one of the great World Cup games of all time. Jack, this tournament, it felt like destiny for France, but despite probably being at maybe not 5-star, but 95% of their best, and with this raucous atmosphere, they're out and they're heading home.
Yeah, it was. I audibly gasped when they ripped it or knocked it on right at the end, because I just thought there's no way they're going to make a mistake here. South Africa have to do something to make it, to make it their ball, their kind of their victory. The way that sort of the Ireland game kind of ended, you were expecting something big, but it was actually I only saw it today that Faf actually got in with the rip that actually dislodged the ball from was it Wardy? So
yeah, it was Reda Wardy on the carry, who had actually had a few good involvements before the
rip. Really good, didn't he? But he went for it, and Faf just managed to just got onto the ball and just ripped it out, which was massive play. For actually myself missing the first 30 minutes of the game, I kind of wondered if I had missed all the good action, but I was there for the mark scrum call from Willemse, which was just I think we all must have sort of had a double take and kind of thought, what's going on here? He's not actually called for a scrum, and I thought they were going to correct Ben O'Keefe and be like, no, he doesn't want a scrum. He's just asking if he wants a scrum. But they were like, nope, let's go for it. And then what was hilarious was they actually won a penalty, and then they missed touch with the kick, and then they had to go back and then kick it out again, which I thought was just very South Africa. And I just thought, wow, yeah, of course you've done that. But South Africa just were incredibly ballsy. They just knew exactly what they're capable of, knew exactly how to break it all down, and that, I guess, that Etzebeth try that took them beyond France was just a ridiculous call. It's an easy 3 points, isn't it? But they just went for it, and fair play to them. They just know their stuff, don't they? And it's like they've planned for it. It's like, like they were expecting New Zealand or France. They were like, yep, no worries. Whoever it is, we'll take them on in an arm wrestle against France or something a bit different like New Zealand. But France were bloody good as well, though. I thought, I was watching it and I was just thinking, I was so happy for Jalabert, because I thought he's bossing this game. He's running lines. His running game is just, he might be one of the best tens in terms of like his running game, but just his skill, and then the missed penalty kick to touch, I think, kind of maybe rattled everyone a little bit, and they got a bit nervy after that, because that was a big mistake, and it just invited more pressure, which you just never want to do against Africa. But as a match, it was just phenomenal. It was just a class watch, and South Africans just squeeze the life out of you, don't they? And it's just it is great to watch because especially when you're not interested in, you've got nothing hanging on the game. You're not supporting either side. But I imagine if you're French watching on, you're just so frustrated because you could see what France were trying to do, and they were almost there, but just South Africa just works so damn hard, and they just had more gas in the tank, I think, at the end of it.
Yeah, they did. And yeah, we could probably spend a bit of time on this, but you looked at how the two teams approached this game. They almost said, well, we're not going to let this be an arm wrestle. We're not going to for South Africa, we're not going to let this become a game that's defined by 3-pointers and the crowd and all that. For France, then it was, we're going to take this game to them. We're going to really test them. Some of their passes that they were trying to exploit Figu or the shooters out the line, like, they were ballsy as hell as well, and it nearly worked for them. Like, this is something we'll get on to for every game, but the fine margins of it are slender. And BHH, I'll come to you next because, like, again, France are out, South Africa through. We knew it was going to be a coin flip game, but in terms of how the teams approached it, not only did it make for a cracker, but it was tactically endearing in and of itself because you kind of could see the chess match within the chess match within the chess match.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like France opened like a house on fire, if it wasn't for that Etzebeth slap backwards, as Ben O'Keefe said, like that could have been France up 14-0, and it's a different story at that point, like watching France's opening, I had the thought that, oh well, at least Ireland don't have to deal with this, and it's going to be another, it would have been another massacre against them. So for South Africa team to respond and to come away with something was incredibly impressive. Like that's the sort of thing the champions go through, and you can definitely see they are an infinitely better team than they were 4 years ago, and they just have the experience now of winning it as well. And the belief that this coaching team has instilled in them is incredible, and it really made for an outrageously entertaining game that would have been so much more fun had we not just been knocked out.
Absolutely. There was kind of that element you're heading into this game, and I mean, not every Irish fan was actively rooting against England, but everyone wants to see Fiji do well, and if Fiji had done it, it would have been great. And it was that kind of mini heartbreak, and then this game starts, and as you said, it's a million miles an hour. Like, it was like a game being played at times 2 speed at times, between the breaks, the offloads, the tackles, even the intensity of it. Like I don't mean to be rude, but like when you hear, say, BT go on about, or TNT is there now, go on about how the Premiership is the fastest league and all this. It's like, well, this is kind of what these leagues think they are. They think they have the intensity, they think they have the skill, they think they have the speed, but this was pure test rugby, pure filth at times. Like, it was that good. And I suppose we have to talk about South Africa as well, because they're on the precipice of going back to back. They've never done that before. Only New Zealand have gone back to back with World Cups. Yeah, they're going to face a stiff challenge against England with the short turnaround and having played such a great game, but they are coming close to it. And Jack, like, for South Africa to come out having, they looked really good against Scotland, looked good against Ireland even in defeat, and then this game, BHH mentioned it there, like, they actually look like they've improved on 4 years ago. And all this talk of them being one-dimensional and dull, you could throw it in the fire. Like, they're not. They're in a really impressive rugby team.
No, totally. They just look ridiculously fit and fast, and just these big units, and they're just flying around, like, and it is seriously impressive. Like, and they'll throw it around as well. I think it's partly part of the tactics is create as much disruption as possible. And the Colby score just comes direct from a turnover, 2-3 passes. Creel sees the space, kicks it into there, and Colby's away. And you're not you're not reacting quick enough. No team in the world is going to react that, quickly to turnover ball. It's the best attacking, ball you're going to get in rugby, like we all know. But yeah, like they will test you, and I think they've probably been misrepresented and misbranded as just the big lags that'll beat you up when you've got Irons, Colby, LaRue, guys like that who can really play. We're being fairly disrespectful to those kinds of skill sets, and Manny Lebok, I suppose, for a mention, because he is a very sort of skillful player. He can mix it with the best, just to miss his kicking. But they can really really play, and they've got ridiculous sort of 9s and 10s and things like that. The fact that Reinach was starting and then Faf coming on, that's a luxury, and they're just bloody tough. Like, they're just bloody tough to beat. And yeah, maybe the 2 week kind of rest in before helped them out a lot, where they were just able to really just manage people and really just get to like an emotional kind of peak for this game, knowing that the next game was probably going to be not as intense. You can probably react a little bit more to the game next week, and just sort of get to the right pitch, sort of conserve energy again, and then hopefully you've got a final to play for, and then it's everyone's up for it then. So I mean, yeah, they've just prepared so well. I think they just had everything planned out nicely, and it's just worked out really really nicely for them. They've just done a fantastic job, and you got to take a hat off to them. They've beaten the hosts, and that's as much as you can say.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny, like, no matter what way the two blockbuster games this weekend went, it was always going to come down in some regard to who all out-thought the other to at least some degree, even if not entirely. But I thought South Africa's tactical flexibility was really impressive. To take off Khaleesi for Quadra Smith, for Dion Ferry with a half an hour to go. You had LaRue, Pollard, Faf de Klerk coming off the bench. They really just said, right, in the last half an hour, we're going to try and wrest the control of this game. We're going to try and squeeze it. We want to be the ones dominating. And it's kind of a tale as old as time as well. South Africa are great front runners. They always have been. They've always been very good at getting in front and holding on to it and squeezing you. And like, it's one thing to have a deep squad. It's one thing to have a talent-filled squad, but to have a 23 that, like, people say it's not the bomb squad, still pretty impressive, and it still won them this game. Like, France went 6-2, and it looked like it may have cost them. They may have needed a bit more of a spark off the bench last night. No disrespect to Makalu, who carried well, but that's probably where this game was somewhat won and lost in the dying embers. And just finally, to yourself, BHH, like, France will be bitterly disappointed. The rugby world kind of wanted to see them go through, as cliched as that is, because they're hosts and everything, but realistically, they're going to have a lot of these lads there in 4 years' time. They're going to have a lot of these lads there for the next 3 or 4 Six Nations. Like, they're not gone because they lost one game by a point in a World Cup quarterfinal.
No, absolutely not. And it's a very young team, and they'll be supplemented by 2 under-20 World Cup winning teams as well. Like, it's like, to think that the winger Yael Barre was thought to be one of the weak links because he's only 20, and he's the one who stopped that Mark Scrum penalty from being put into touch. Like, he has that wherewithal even at such a tender age. And they were the team that destroyed Ireland in the under-20 final this summer without him. It's kind of scary, just the production that they've had in the last 5 years, and it's kind of hard to see that stopping. So, and especially with all their resources and having the Pro D2 and 14 professional teams, it's unlike Ireland, where we have some of the talent coming through these lads are going to get first team reps at a senior level much quicker than some of the Irish lads as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a model that works. They know how to fund it. They know how to run it. The players know where they stand. The clubs are successful, and yeah, there's an element of it. They play an awful lot of club games, and every once in a while that comes back to haunt them. We think of Toulouse the last 2 years in Europe, for instance, looking a bit legged, but France are not going away. And it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a pity that we have to move on and talk about the other two quarterfinals, but this one was so good. And the next one that we're going to talk about was decent, but not incredible. England, guided by Owen Farrell, make it to another World Cup semi-final. This will be a repeat of the 2019 final after their 30-24 win over Fiji. Like, listen, Owen Farrell showed what he can do, just like Johnny Sexton showed what he can do, and Bowden Barrett did, and so on. It was a great weekend for the out halves. PHH, I'll let you take the lead on this one. Fiji will feel like they let this slip. They had chances. They had a dominant set piece. Probably didn't get the rub of the green at breakdown time, I think is the best way to put it. Maybe 60-40 or so forth. But for England, it is progress, and it is a place in the semi-finals, and that is the duality of sport. When you look at Ireland and France conquering, and England are the ones in the semi-final.
Yeah, it's I kind of view this game as like a big journey, but like these two teams have gone through. Like who'd have thought that we would have been almost expecting Fiji to get into the semi-final? Well, I was expecting them to beat England, given how much progress they've made in the last couple of months. The Fijian Drua has been huge for their development. They came into this tournament playing some great game managed rugby. We knew they had the skill to score tries in an instant, and we saw that in this game to bring it back into a draw with 13 minutes left, and you thought they're going to kick on. But I think the loss of Caleb months before the tournament, and then TD Tala before this game, kind of showed, this wasn't their best performance in this tournament. Their flair was on show, but it wasn't there for most of the game. And Fiji can go away and be disappointed, but I think if this is a signal of what's to come for them, that's very exciting. And then on the flip side, like if you're an English fan, you're happy that they're maximizing their chances of winning with their style of play, and they're definitely improving as the game is going on. It's less sleep inducing than the Argentina victory, for example. But like if that continues over the next 4 years, there's not going to be many people who expect them to reach another semi-final. So is that progress compared to 4 years ago? Yeah, I'm not too sure. As for the refereeing, I'd probably agree with you. I think Bottia was a bit unlucky. He was a devil at the breakdown, as he always is. But at the same time, Fiji were probably lucky not to get a red card with Habosi. I'm not really sure what a red card is anymore. It's kind of
not after this weekend anyway.
No, but yeah. Look, if I know a lot of fans of all countries are disappointed with referees from the quarterfinal, but I don't know if any of them have any merit outside of maybe Fiji at a stretch. But I do think England were probably the better team and deserved to win this game, even though that's not really what we all wanted.
Yeah, no, it is the case that England were better. There's no doubt about that. But if you ever say that paint by numbers and rugby by stats, it means nothing. I'll give you one. One of the England back three had 5 meters total in carrying and had 3 passes. Like if there's ever a 13-man game, or even not 13-man game, maybe even a 10-man game in the modern game, it is this England side. And listen, let's not be completely outlandish either. If it wasn't for Owen Farrell and George Ford, they probably wouldn't be in as good of a place as they are, because those lads have bossed them through the pools and now through this game, and that's again the importance of having an elite out half at test level. It's been the case for 30 odd years.
And you have to give them huge credit for their composure. Like,
Yeah.
to concede 2 tries like that and get it back to a draw, like, you felt the momentum was with Fiji, and then they just stifled the game again and got 2 more, a drop goal and a penalty, and put it out to 6 points. Like that's a masterclass in how to maximize your chance of winning when it's not a great system around you otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely no reason not to praise their well, I mean, their halfbacks as a rule have been poor, but Ford and Farrell have been very good. Jack, I'll come on to you about England. Like, it's hard to know whether they have the talent to play an expansive game sometimes, because it doesn't look like they do sometimes. They look a bit like, Ireland 2019 at times. But when you do have the likes of Itoje, the likes of Jamie George, the likes of Owen Farrell, I thought Tuolangi had one of his best games in a while. You're probably just going to have enough anyways, because these lads at the end of the day are talented and they can drag you over the line, especially the likes of Farrell, Jamie George, Itoje. Lads were just born winners.
Yeah. I mean, you don't, if it's working for you, then, just carry on and keep kind of layering things as you go along. And I think, we saw that in this game, I think, where they stuck to making a mess of set piece. I don't know how many times Fiji messed up their lineouts, even after winning the ball cleanly. Bit of pressure and they knock it on, or someone gets in and they sack. I don't know. They so many lineouts England were able to just sack them down straight away. Defensive line set, and they're shooting up, they're in your face, and they're not giving Fiji any time. Now that did slow that line speed towards the end, so they really kind of went hard early and tried to slow down the Fijians. But if that game had been a little bit longer, or they played a few more phases and Fiji tried to throw it around a little bit more, then maybe we could be talking about a different kind of result. But I think that they at the end of the match, the English had done enough. They had held them out, and Fiji didn't really have much to play with. But I don't think England have been tested to really change their kind of approach. They've been ahead in pretty much all their games, I think, haven't they? And there's not really been a time when they've had to, push.
Just the Samoa game, but even at that, they were pushing anyways. It was a more open game than
That's right, yeah,
you'd have expected.
Yeah, so it was that was a little bit nervy, but I suppose they still sort of stuck to the game plan and kind of did what they had to, because they probably knew that they could muscle out Samoa come 65, 70 minutes. Try and do that against South Africa. This week coming up, it's not going to be. You're going to have to try something different. You're going to have to throw the ball out and give it to Elliot Daly a bit more, or maybe Marcus Smith at 15. Why they did that, I have no idea. But
it was not his day at all.
The poor lad was battered and bruised. But England just stuck to their guns and didn't really have to do much else, and that got you a semi-final. So I don't like it, but that's the luck of the draw, isn't it? So
yeah, and it's better to be lucky than to be good. I've made this point all year on these podcasts that, like, everyone talks about, oh, you need depth. You don't actually need depth to win a World Cup. You need about 26 lads. The history shows you only ever go that far if you're going to win, because after that it just becomes tough. And England, to be fair, have been mainly fit when they didn't have lads suspended, and they got the job done. And just we'll leave it at this now after this. But BHH, I'll finish with you. One thing that probably should get talked about is England's scrum, because they got fairly eviscerated at times on Sunday, and South Africa have proven with, the 4 lads that they select and probably the 1,700 different props they have waiting in the wings in South Africa, that they have guys who know how to scrummage and put you under immense pressure. And if England can't get that right, it's very hard to see them having any chance.
Absolutely. Like, it's hard to see them having any chance, even if they get parity at the
Yeah,
scrum.
I probably
Going
should have
backward.
prefaced that as well, but
I
yeah,
will. I will say though that Fiji have had a very strong scrum in the tournament. So I don't know if that's an England weakness or a Fiji strength, but in either case, you'd fancy South Africa to get a penalty or two out of England, and if that's the case, that's not really the script that England are looking for, because they're the ones who want the penalties and the 3 points and move, to keep things ticking over and slow. So it could be a long old afternoon for them on Saturday night.
I really could. And it's again, we talked about South Africa and their ability to find something and to go after it and then to change and to strangle you. Well, they could do the same on Saturday, but then at the same time, England probably only got to maybe fourth gear. South Africa had to hit sixth, just like France. And typically, when that happens in World Cups, the next game is a bit of a leveler. You know that it happened in 2019 with New Zealand, and then with England. You know, with the hitting a peak a game early or whatever, and 2015. I can't really remember who, but you could say 20. Well, you could say 2015. You could say maybe Argentina. They were brilliant against us and didn't hit the same heights against Australia and so forth. It happens.
Mm.
You know, it happens from time to time. I do want to move on to Argentina next because they were the minor match before the senior match, the precursor before the main event, as far as we are concerned. And they do return to the last four following a 29-17 victory over Wales. BHH, I'll give this one to you as well. I do realize that I've probably given you the short end of the stick here with with these two games, but look, there's still a lot to talk about. Wales, like realistically, they're just going to be left ruining the fact that they started fast, but they only got to 10 points in front, and when they had a chance to go further, they couldn't kick on, and then they just ran out of legs.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as someone who went 0-4 in their predictions this weekend,
You're not the only one. The
I
entire
think
our entire podcast nearly did.
I I actually think this is the biggest surprise of the weekend, though. I Much like England, I thought Wales are built to be bullies, to grind out a performance, maximize their chance of winning. And like when they're 10-0 up, you think they're just going to strangle the Argentinians, play territory, kick their points, and just move on. And they didn't do it. Like, I've long held the belief that the formula for beating Wales is don't concede penalties to them. And Wales conceded 12 penalties and Argentina 7. Like, that's massive for Argentina. That's the only way they were going to win, was to do that. And somehow that's what ended up. Like, it wasn't even I don't even think Argentina were all that good. So you didn't see much of their magic or flair from that you saw against Japan.
They butchered
Um,
a few chances, two or three anyways, that they probably should have done better with.
but like, Wales are a limited team that have been improving, but they're close to their ceiling at the same time. I think Gatlin papers over a lot of their cracks, and while I think they probably could have fancied themselves in this semi-final and might have given, if it was us, they might have fancied their chances against us in the semi-final. But this wasn't of the four. This was definitely the worst quarterfinal and the most surprising. And look, credit to Argentina, they've beaten New Zealand twice in this cycle. They could give it a go. It'll be worth watching, maybe.
Yeah. Well, depending on where our scar levels are on Friday night. But I do agree with you. I think Wales, this is probably their max, maybe not their 80-minute performance, but in terms of their overall World Cup is their max. And Jack, I gave you a similar question about England, about how certain lads dragged them over the line. But you look at Wales as well. I thought George North had a stunning game at the weekend. I thought Jack Morgan was everywhere for every minute at every ruck of this entire tournament. It felt like he was the one there for them. Dan Bigger had a huge game. And again, the importance of, in tight rugby matches, just having lads who can just see it out. And you think of Rio Dyer's inexperience not giving that pass. You think of Costello with the intercept. it was ultimately lads who weren't blood and bred of the last. Understandably, they've only come through this onto the scene the last year and a half, so I'm not blaming 4 year cycles. But that is where experience they're the guys who have to drag you over the line, and they just couldn't.
Yeah, yeah. I think BHH made a good point about Argentina's discipline, because I really noticed that in the game too. I just thought that they were very reactive and very smart with the referee. Every single time they were, they're checking with the ref. They're making looks. They're making it look as though they're being, they're showing their what's the expression? You're seeing good images from the Argentinians. They're reacting to what the referee's saying and things like that, and they're being very good, and they're being very sort of yes sir, no sir, whatever you say, sir. I thought that was very, very smart. I thought they were very good in that sense. They didn't kind of overreach themselves. They just sort of played a physical game, I thought, and they were just very direct, and they wanted to play quickly, but they wanted to play physically, and I thought that was just very kind of, risk averse, but seemed to do the job. But yeah, Wales maybe missing Balatai, or maybe they're missing having, more depth there, so that Wainwright could have come on in the last, 20 or 15 odd, and try and see that game out with a bit more energy, or maybe having Gareth Anscombe there, who maybe could have, seen that, Sanchez coming up fast, and he might have given him the slip and got himself, because, pre-planned moves. It's hard for the young fella to come in and go, I'm gonna absolutely, rip this up and just go myself here, because you just never know what's, who's lingering out the back, and you're not expecting it. So, it's tough on him. But yeah, like I just, it was odd. Like, I just felt that Wales would have seen that out. I just felt as though they have the wherewithal. They just know how to win, kind of ugly, which was really surprising. And for everything that Wales did well, Argentina just added that a little bit of pressure at the end. And Nicolas Sanchez was just class in that last sort of 10, 12 minutes. He was just magic. How he doesn't start games, I don't know, but I think he's absolutely fantastic for them. So it's great. I'm really happy for Argentina, because they do deserve that over the last sort of couple of years. I think they're deserving of a quarterfinal win sometimes, but it's just whether they turn up sometimes. Like the game against England, you just never know what sort of dire kind of game you might watch, and it could be similar this weekend against New Zealand. I hope they go out and play well though, and I hope they give it a good lash against the All Blacks. But yeah, Wales will be disappointed with that though, I think.
Yeah, they will. And to their credit, and I do have a few Welsh listeners, and I'm not pandering to the crowd on them, but I think to their credit, the best Wales could have done would have been getting through a tough quarterfinal relative, as BHH said, relative to the two teams involved, and getting to a semi-final, and potentially maybe knocking off an England or an Argentina or whoever in the third, fourth place game. And it feels like realistically they only came 20 minutes short of that. Like, I don't think that's a bad World Cup when you consider, like, the second week of February, what was it, the 12th of February or whatever, they were absolutely eviscerated in Murrayfield by Scotland, a team they don't typically lose to in years gone by. So to Gatland's credit, to Wales's credit, they've turned the tide. They've found a plan that works, and I think the difference is probably just a little bit of maybe not results bias, but just a bit of bias on our own behalfs, because we understand that this is what Gatland was going to go in there to do, whereas Steve Borthwick probably had the same plan for England from a mile out, but we're probably more critical because we haven't seen it before. This is exactly what we expected from Gatland, though. We do have to talk about Saturday night. I'm sorry, again.
Can I just ask first?
Yeah. Delay the Saturday night conversation as long as you can, mate.
Absolutely.
Gladly.
Like, we've already talked about how optimistic we are about France. And I mentioned I think Fiji should take this as a stepping stone. like, how optimistic are you two about Wales's progression over the next 4 years? And I will add that I think this is a huge tournament for Jack Morgan in particular, and he should be, he could end up being a Sam Warburton type talismanic figure for Wales over the next however long he wants to be. But how many other lads are there around him as well when you think the likes of Bigger and Halfpenny and others are coming towards the end of their career?
I think they're going to have a shaky 4 years, to be honest. I think when they phase out Bigger, North, Falatau, even the likes of an Adam Beard in the second row, a position where experience is crucial. I think they are going to kind of struggle, but like Dowie Lake has shown he can be a leader. Jack Morgan has shown it. Gareth Anscombe, if he could stay injury free for the remainder of his career, maybe, but the poor lad has been absolutely jinxed. Costello has the talent, Reece Salmon has the talent, Rio Dyer has the talent. I think Gatland has an ability to maximize what he has when they get into training camp. The regions are going to have a tough 3 years, I think. I think they're going to struggle to break the top 10 in the URC, if I'm being entirely honest. I think every once in a while they'll have one good region. But I think I do believe Gatland will get the most out of him. I think he's shown it. If he stays, he'll get the most out of him. He like Pivac didn't think Jack Morgan had it for international rugby. It was like the South African coaches that get quoted every couple of years about a Van der Merwe or a Stander. He didn't think he had it, but he does. He's talented, and eventually, and this has always been the thing, eventually Gatland's Midas touch is going to run out, and eventually they are going to be as stale at the international game as they are at the regional game until they fix it. But I think for now, I think he'll see them through this rocky waters. I firmly believe that, and I think they're going to be challenging with Scotland for fourth place in the Six Nations over the next year or so. I do think England will push on ahead of them, if I'm being honest. But that's just because, like, realistically, the Premiership has never been worse. It cannot get any worse than it is at the moment, as it has been the last 2 years. So the only way is up for them, I feel. Whereas I think Scotland are going to go backward, and I think Wales just don't have the depth. But Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I similar to yourself there, Kevin. I think that Wales will compete, but I don't think they'll kind of win. If that makes sense. Like, I don't think they're at that pitch. I think
They'll always be tough to beat, won't they?
Yeah, and I think that's what Gatland has done with them. He's made them very tough to beat. He's made them quite fit. However, the biggest indictment is that Gatland always wants to have the fittest team ever, right? He was beaten by Argentina, a relatively, inexperienced team at this sort of, grand kind of scale. They've been around for ages, but Argentina don't have the same kind of resources that the top teams do. So for the Argentinians to come back in the last 10, 20 minutes and sneak it against you when, you pride yourself on having the fittest team, or at least that being this biggest strength in terms of, what you've got, then I don't think the player depth is there. I don't think they have a bigger pool of players. And I think for kind of similar reasons, like you say, but I guess different slightly because England have more players. They have sort of better quality individuals, but it's whether or not they can kind of make that kind of fit and gel and mix nicely, and they can maybe add a little layer or two to their attack, and they could be quite tricky. But yeah, I think Wales, they've got some lovely players there. They've got some great players. Like Costello's a good player, and Rio Dyer's a good player, and things like those young guys. Jack Morgan for his post-match interviews where I can't understand a word he says because he talks that quickly. Other than that, he's absolutely faultless, like he's class. But they've got some great players, but they're not Grand Slam winners. They're not going to be threatening, big time for Six Nations and things like that. So yeah,
and that's not a bad place to be considering they are run by, to use a regional fan sign, the worst run union. Like some jokes just write themselves. Thankfully, and we will talk about now. So If I see a drop off in listenership around now in the stats, I'll know why. Thankfully, being the worst run union is not something Ireland have to deal with. Being one of the best run countries, one of the teams that you can be most excited by, one of the teams you want to watch, is something they'll have. A team that plays with passion, with heart, a team that we love, we adore. But Saturday night was not to be. And Jack, I'll let you lead the way on this one. Like, it was an absolute emotional roller coaster from probably the haka. And sorry, you could probably say Ireland's call to the haka with the number 8 to Andrew Porter looking like Andrew Porter in one of the shots. The opening exchanges of the game and feeling like same old story, and then we claw our way back and like again, apart from the emotional roller coaster of it, which is my question, like literally Jordy Barrett's leg away from going through.
Yeah.
That's Andy Farrell is right. That's why we love sport in a really weird way. That's why we love sport.
Love and hate in equal measure, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
there was there were so many moments in that game where you just thought it's ebbing that way, it's coming back this way, and you know the ABs are coming out and doing this, and you think, oh geez, here they're not the same All Blacks team we beat, last year, and they're just not. This is a different beast. We just think, okay, I still believe we can manipulate them, get them kind of bent out of shape, expose Rico Ioane, which I thought they did a bit. I think they could have done more because he missed a load of tackles. I think he lets Bundyaki in for his score, things like that. I just think there were moments where you just thought, yep, they've got them there. They just need to do that a little bit more to make it sort of simplify it. And I thought that so many moments I just thought, okay, I think Ireland have the measure of them now. I think they've kind of they can work this out. They can kind of work New Zealand out. And I thought that they kind of did that by sort of halftime, about 45 minutes, because I thought that we had played most of the rugby, like we didn't kick an awful lot, which I thought was maybe a bit of a downfall. Because I kind of forget how many kicks New Zealand had in that game. It was something like 33 to like 16 from us. It was a vast.
It was us going, and I'll let you jump back in a minute, but it was kind of us going off scheme in some regard. Like we usually kick more often than we do, and a couple more phases than we do. Yeah, it's going to be skewed by going 20 and 30 phases at two different occasions of the game, but Ireland did have to go off scheme a little bit, and New Zealand, to their credit, the kicking point, they nailed that part of the game.
Absolutely nailed it. I mean, I just thought, they chipped maybe twice in that first half. I think maybe more, but it was 2 or 3 times, and every single time they regathered it. Probably scored out of 2 of those 3. So they just. They showed us a picture, to kind of use the phrase I used earlier. They gave us a picture and went, well, there you go. What are you going to do about that? And then we didn't react and didn't put somebody just in behind like Jamison Gibson Park, who I thought had unfortunately a really poor game. And they just outsmarted us. Classic New Zealand, like that's what they do. They do something that they're not expecting, and you just think, oh well, you didn't do that last year, so you're not expecting them to do it again. It was fascinating as a game. Obviously, it's heartbreaking because they were so physical. They were so good at the breakdown. They just slowed everything down for us, made it messy, and I'm gonna let you guys jump in here because there was so much going on that you just couldn't really work out what was going on. Johnny Sexton's kicking like chip kicks into the 22, and you're just like, what are we doing this for? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
With two skip passes and 2 cross kicks that were millimeters from coming off.
Yeah.
We had a kicking behind that they got a good block on Will Jordan's 50-22 when they were literally on the 50-meter line when that ball went back into the pocket. That comes from that. A bounce of a ball for the Fayanuku try. Now, to be fair, Bud Barrett, as he said with the chip kicks, was unreal. He had one of his best games as a fullback. You have the scrum penalties, which, as we know with Ireland, yeah, they paint this picture the whole time, but they sometimes get the benefit because, Tyler Lomax was also swinging his hips out, but that's the nature of it. You have to see who's the cause, not who's both at it. You had instances of, as we said, with the leg, the Jordy Barrett's leg holding up Ronnie Kelleher, Kellen Doris's knock on, Johnny Sexton's missed kick, a couple of loose handling errors, of which Ireland had very few, I should say. More loose passes that didn't go perfect to hand, and that was more of an issue than actually dropping the ball. BHH, I'll let you jump in now because, as Jack said, fine margins at test level, and it's so hard. You'd have to be a really, really grumpy person to be mad at this Irish team because they played quite well. Not perfect, but they played quite well, and New Zealand just happened to hit 100%, and that's just sport. Like,
Oh, yeah. Where to start, really? I actually think that we saw a Joe Schmidt dream match. Like both of New Zealand's first half tries came directly from chip kicks. And as Jack said, it's something that they employed a lot throughout the first half. It's clearly something that was identified before the game, and it caught Ireland out. But at the same time, and I think what the third try was first phase move that they caught something. It caught Van der Fleer and Doris from a line out.
Van der Fleer and Sheehan, was it not?
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
But the point being is they targeted, saw a weakness, targeted it, and got 3 tries from it.
Yeah.
They didn't really threaten us a huge amount in face play otherwise. It felt like in defense, Ireland were driving them back. They could have, periods of 16 or 20 phases, and we weren't all that troubled otherwise. So it's hard to take when a game like that, when that happens in a game, and conversely, our face play was better. Like we kept up the ball for 37 phases towards the end. Every time in the first half, it looked like we were getting outside them, especially targeting Rieko Ioane. I do have to credit the New Zealand coaches at halftime because we were much more threatening in the first half than we were in the second half, and we were more reliant on our forwards in the second half, especially maul time and got 1 try out of it and nearly had a second. Like as a game, I do think we looked like the better side, but New Zealand were more clinical. And how many times in the last 25 years have we ever said that New Zealand were clinical? That is their ethos. So look, from that point of view, it's hard to take. Like even when we were 13-0 down, it felt like we were the better team. And I don't know about you two. It wasn't until that Barnes signaled a penalty after Whitelock locked on the ball that I thought we weren't going. I was confident the entire time up until the very end, and it was a direct, opposition to the 2013 game. Where it felt like it was going to be payback for that.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think this New Zealand team is as good as South Africa. Going forward, I think South Africa should be heavy favourites.
No, I agree.
But at the same time, looking at the Irish performance, it's hard to look at anything and go, yeah, they got that wrong. There was a few defensive lapses, but like, when is there not?
I think they could have got more right as a whole, but I do want people listening and yourselves to know, I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean that more as maybe they could have adapted slightly better, but I mean slightly. Like New Zealand were flooding the rucks, but because of that, the wide shots showed it a few times. They were extremely narrow, You know, we probably needed to just keep someone, and we did go for it. I will say we did go for it. We kept Dan Sheehan out wide at times, Peter O'Mahony holding their width, and we were very close to pulling off, and that's where it's execution error and luck in the case of the Dan Sheehan and the bounce of the ball.
Yeah.
But it is literally, if they change things 1%, you might win the game. Like it's not even. I'm more saying it just to throw it out there more than anything.
Yeah, you say that though as well. Like part of the issues in the opening 20 or 30 minutes was the line out, and like they conceded more penalties early. You know, there was the Tyburn not rolling away at the start and to make it 3-0, and then I think there was one other one on Porters, and like they let that happen, and then they adapted fairly quickly. You know, there wasn't that many penalties let go. Otherwise, you're kind of like, oh, what, you know, why isn't Barnes doing that? But he was consistent the entire game. You know, it was whatever he was doing to us, he was doing to them. And New Zealand had it for the entire game, and we took 15 or 20 minutes to adapt. And, you know, we fixed the line out as well after 30 minutes. So it's not like we didn't adapt. It's just that New Zealand didn't need to because they were already there. And like, it's hard to look back on that and say, oh, they should have done something different, or they should have gone and made any, like, it's, but at the same time, I still think they should have won. You know, it's one of the hardest losses to look at and go,
the hardest. I'm gonna I understand there's Leinster fans who lost 2 Ireland Cup finals by 3 points in the last 2 years. I'm not diminishing that, but from my own point of view, the hardest loss. Like the emotional roller coaster, again, to use that term, from the figure of 8 before the game and knowing the weekend it was, seeing Peter O'Mahony and Conor Murray at the front of that, like quite literally the 2 most forward people at that. And you see Andrew Porter, you see the camera cuts to Johnny Sexton, Johnny Cam, about 75 times over 80 minutes for no reason. And there's the post-game scenes and everything. And the hope is the crazy thing, you know. Like I kind of agree with your point about the last couple of minutes. You thought they were going to score, but at the same time, I don't even know what I felt, because I didn't know if I was asking for a penalty. I didn't know if I was asking for a moment, a score, for New Zealand not to get it right. Like, how often do you can go 5 minutes of defending without conceding a penalty? So rare, like so rare. The only moment that I can remember that comes close with is Northampton in 2011, and Munster couldn't even breach their 22. Ireland did get into their 22. Like, it is, you have to give New Zealand so much credit. Like you just have to. It was a clash of the Titans, and they came out on top. And fair play to them. I do want to throw something at you, because I have a stat here. For anyone who ever thinks I I rely on other people's content too much, here you go again. The brilliant Tom Savage with a couple of ruck stats for us on his Patreon. I'm just gonna borrow one of them. I want to ask you, lads, and you can both get a guess at this. If I was to tell you that the Irish player with the most clean breaks also had the most dominant ruck clearances, who do you think it would be? The lads are thinking now. I know silence isn't a great in the podcast. The lads are really thinking about this. Jack, do you want to go first?
The most dominant clear outs and the most clean breaks.
Yeah, not a lot of clean breaks because it was that kind of game, but yeah.
I Dan Sheehan.
Incorrect.
Bundy.
Bundy is a great guess. It is a back, but it's not Bundy.
Ringrose.
Hugo Keenan.
Hugo Keenan
had 10 dominant cleanouts. And to be fair, I did think halfway through the game, I was like, I'm seeing Hugo in a lot more rucks.
Jesus.
But I didn't realize it was as good as it was. Peter O'Mahony was second with 8. And to be fair, I actually thought every time Peter O'Mahony hit a ruck, he actually nearly broke someone's leg. He was visceral. Like the one on Sam Cane before the Bundyaki try? Like he got the full clear out of it. But that it was that kind of game. Ireland did have to adapt.
Treatment.
Yeah. Lads like Keenan did have to get stuck in. Ringrose as well. His ruck stats were were really good. Like he was at least a pillar on 20 of the rucks for an outside centre, as well as being defensively really good and offensively really sharp as well. Like his passing game was really good at times under a lot of pressure. Like that's exactly the example of Ireland being shoved off scheme, having to figure it out. And to be fair, I hope I didn't come across too critical earlier. Having to figure it out, and they did, but just that 1% short, and that's all it is. It is that fine margins again. And Jack, I it's hard to frame questions on a game like this because you don't want to repeat the same points over and over and over again. But like for Ireland to lose, we felt like New Zealand had to hit 100%, and they did. And Ireland would have to hit probably 90% to have a chance. And they probably did, realistically. But it feels like this game was lost. For all the talk of being 13-0 down and everything, this game was kind of lost in the moments between, the two moments. Will Jordan scores a 60-meter first phase try, and just after the Rona Kelleher gets held up and Ireland just look completely deflated. And Caelan Doris makes a rare mistake, and you just kind of know then they're the two moments of the game where you're just thinking, and like,
yeah,
it's too simple, but it's a simplistic way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I mean, I think you both make pretty interesting points, and I think that there's a couple of things. I don't think that the Will Jordan score is that significant. They're probably going to get another. It's obviously significant. there's a few faces going on.
We lost by 4 points, but
but I mean, New Zealand are gonna pull something out in that second half. You're not gonna completely contain them, so they're probably gonna get some kinds of scores. I think the two big things for me were probably that Jordie Barrett misses the penalty, and then we don't exit well enough from that. Conor Murray gets us. I'm gonna say it's a soft penalty. Like another referee another day doesn't give that, because
Barrett goes. If that happens at the last minute, as we said, with Barnes not giving away a penalty and this was clear cut, it doesn't happen. Because Barrett goes down so easily.
So look, Murray knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's making it look like he's going for the ball. He's looking at the ball, but he's all over Barrett. Barrett goes down. They get another penalty, and there you are. You're outside one score. Now it could be Stade de France, deja vu for Johnny Sexton if he slots back in the pocket. Once we get into the 22 at the end of the game, that's a completely different game. But yeah, the big one is you've just scored a penalty try. You go to the corner again, and you don't get a pushover try. Like, how on earth does Kelleher not get into a position that's better? We're all saying that Jordie Barrett has done a great job, and of course he has, because that's exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to try and get a bit of a side on sort of hit on someone so that you can get under their torso. If Kelleher's in a better position, or he times it better, there's absolutely no way you can stop someone from that distance, from that sort of speed and power. There's just absolutely no way you can stop that. It's like a scrum going over. You just put the ball down. Like, it's a simple skill, but how they freaked out, got a bit nervy. Kelleher has a habit of getting the nerves, shall we say, and not performing maybe sometimes to the fullest extent. We're talking like 1 or 2% here. Like, New Zealand were absolutely fantastic, but like we were saying, they weren't outstandingly brilliant and blew us out of the water. They had a couple of good set plays that were clever and exposed a few bits, but we were able to adapt and come back at them and score tries ourselves. So, they were a few percent points better than us, and they also had a little bit of the rub of the green, and they got a few of those late calls, and I think it's what you need to win, to win a knockout game.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Rob Herring and Dan Sheehan have made a habit of breaking at the right time and scoring from, but that's just how the maul swung around. Like, it's not on Kelleher. I've another
Rob Herring
horrible.
scores that try, just for all else.
Oh, yeah, okay. I've another horrible stat for you. The top 5 most phases in Rugby World Cup history, according to Cage Mini, I think it is the stat partner of the World Cup. Wales 2011 got to 27 against France. They lost that game. England in 2019 got to 28 against South Africa. They lost that game. New Zealand got to 28 against France in 2007. They lost that one. Wales in 2011 against Australia got to 32. They lost that. And the most phases ever in a World Cup game, Ireland 37 against New Zealand. They lost that. So
yeah, we get it, Kaden.
It's not ideal, you know.
We lost.
It just shows again, like perception would have thought that anytime you go over like 30 phases, they're going to concede a penalty or you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe it's just not meant to be. I just let you close on the tournament as a whole from an Ireland perspective, and even the 2 years as a whole, whatever way you want to take it. PHH, I'll come to you first. Like, nobody can be upset with Ireland. I feel like they can't be they can be disappointed, don't get me wrong, but can't be too angry or anything. How would you like to sum up this World Cup in the last couple of years?
Oh, what a journey. Like, I don't think you can phrase it in anything other than a journey, you know. I was thinking earlier today, like, when you think back to the 2007 World Cup or the 2019 World Cup and the infamous reviews that came afterwards.
I don't believe there was a 2019 World Cup. I believe it was postponed due to a typhoon.
Yeah. But like, if there's going to be, you know, some major internal review of how this cycle went, like, I'm not sure there's a huge amount I would recommend changing, you know. Maybe, you know, personally, I don't like having an inside center as your 23 on the bench, but like, other than that, systemically, I thought everything was very good for 2 years, and it's not like we peaked too early. It's not like we did anything wrong in the tournament. It's not like we did anything wrong with the priorities in the Six Nations. It's just hard to take, you know.
It is. Jack, well, what have you made of the last year, 2 years, month, and all that from Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, probably not enough Ulster players in the squad. I'd probably just say that. But no.
You're being paid to say that by
yeah,
Johnny Peacher, yeah.
Having a backup 10 maybe to close the game out. You know, probably should start there.
Watch it.
But I mean, yeah, like there's not a huge amount. I think that one of the things that we've found out is that we've found a style that suits us. I think then we've found a way to utilize the best of our abilities, and I think that, you know, the style of play that we've used does work, and it does give us a lot of variety. And I think that probably sort of disseminating that throughout the provinces is probably going to be a helpful way to, again, get cohesiveness, which has been like the biggest thing to come out of this sort of 4 years, is that, you know, all the guys playing in Leinster, they come play in the Ireland team. It's very seamless and everyone just fits in, and it's very easy to just see the relationships and the connections just work really, really nicely. Now, if we have that kind of top-down approach where, okay, actually, lads, we found this works really well and we can actually beat the best teams in the world, if we just do it more and more often, then you're more likely to, you know, win those close tight games again. So I think just getting a whole kind of systematic approach throughout the whole kind of 4 provinces is probably where I'd kind of go with it. But there's very few kind of work-ons, I guess, to use a bit of a Joe Schmidt phrase. But yeah, there's really not much. It's a really good last sort of 2 years for an Irish point of view.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I made the point on Twitter. Somehow I managed to no, sorry. In a brief second of calmness in between everything at the end, I managed to find the words. I did say, like, the last 2 years has been unprecedented success. It's been nothing but joy. It's been nothing but exciting rugby. It's been something you could be proud of. And, I was making notes. I didn't have time to record a Friday podcast on the game by itself, but I was making notes on it, and I was saying, like, this was our chance to have our Italian 90 moment, or Katie Taylor moment. And yeah, it's gone a begging, but, like, still never going to forget Zombie after the South Africa game. You're still never going to forget that game in general. Like, you're never going to forget winning the Grand Slam on home soil. You're not going to forget beating the All Blacks, because we haven't done it enough times to forget any of them. None of these things you forget about or you disregard. I do want to say there is a chance that Mike Cash might be going. There's been no word of him signing a contract. So we'll wait and see. If again, this was something I posted on Twitter. I think the best man for the job is in Ireland, but I don't want to see him get the job, and that's Mike Prendergast. I think he's one of the best attack coaches in the world. Again, we'll wait and see. Just before we go, because I've kept you long enough, semi-finals, BHH, New Zealand against Argentina Friday night. Who's winning that one?
Look, Argentina need to keep that close early, or else it's going to get out of hand. So New Zealand for me.
Mike was on mute. Okay. Jack, who's taking that? Are you going New Zealand, or are you going to go for the upset?
I'd love Argentina to make an upset, but that would just make the final a bit of a non-starter, I think. So yeah, New Zealand as well.
Okay. And Jack, I'll let you lead for the Saturday Night Lights 2019 final replay. England against South Africa. Yeah, I feel like I know which way you're gonna go.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm gonna go with England on this one. They're gonna get their revenge on the Box and go all the way. Yeah, they're my team to win the World Cup. You can hear the sarcasm in my voice. Yeah, I mean, South Africa are just gonna. I think genuinely that will be the more convincing of the semi-final wins. I think South Africa will really turn up the heat on England. I think they want to try and blast them out of the first half, and then try and coast their way to the end of the match. So I think South Africa are going to go really hard at England early to try and get that game done as quickly as possible.
I can see that, especially when especially when they don't have the extra day like New Zealand do. Like, if you could get the job done at halftime, it could make a huge difference come a week later. I'm going to say South Africa, and I'm going to say New Zealand, but I'm going to throw in a huge caveat on the New Zealand game. In 1989, in 1995, in 1999, in 2003, in 2007 doesn't count, we didn't get out the pool. 2003, 2011, 2015, 2019. The team who beat Ireland in the quarterfinals or in the knockouts lost their next game. So never know. You never know. I'm going to say New Zealand are going to win because I think they're the better team. But, just saying, we might be the curse as opposed to having a curse on us. We might actually be the curse after all.
No, the curse is the 18 match winning streak. No one's ever gonna get more than 18.
Unless you're Cyprus.
That's the curse.
Let's just say it's Cyprus at 25, and then we'll just stop looking to achieve it. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Despite everything, it has been a good group therapy session, all things considered. We all enjoyed the rugby, and that's, even if it was incredibly deflating come Saturday night. I will be back with preview and recap pods of the semi-final action, and you can catch me on the new Red Army podcast, which returns this Wednesday as we look ahead to Munster's season. As always, thanks through everyone for listening. If you like what you see or hear, please do subscribe, and you can find the links for my social medias as well as the lads' Twitter pages down below. But for next time, But for until next time, thanks a lot to the lads.